This is the testimony of Elizabeth Holmes going on the record in San Francisco, California at 9 o'clock. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
This is the story of a young woman who decided that reality was optional. She looked at the world of medicine, slow, complicated, bound by science, and thought, what if I just pretend I've solved it? What if I sell the dream first and figure out the details later? That was the spark. Not a breakthrough in a lab, not a discovery in science, but a breakthrough in deception. She didn't invent a machine that could change healthcare forever. She invented a story. And with that story, she conned billionaires, dazzled politicians, and fooled the media into crowning her the next Steve Jobs. But behind the black turtlenecks and the icy stare was a con so fragile that the moment anyone asked for proof, the whole empire began to crack. And when it cracked, it didn't just expose a fraud, it exposed how easily hype can blind the smartest people in the room. This is the story of Elizabeth Holmes and how she rose as Silicon Valley's golden girl and fell as one of its greatest frauds. Elizabeth Holmes grew up in Washington, D.C., born in 1984 into a family where ambition was practically inherited. Her father worked in government agencies, her mother in policy. So dinner table conversations weren't about small talk, they were about big ideas. Holmes absorbed that culture early. Success wasn't optional, it was expected. In 2002, she entered Stanford to study chemical engineering. On paper, it looked like the perfect fit, a brilliant young woman diving into science at one of the world's top universities. But classmates and professors noticed something different. She wasn't obsessed with experiments or research, she was obsessed with image. She spoke in grand visions, hinted at revolutionary ideas, but rarely showed the work behind them. Professors and classmates remembered her as secretive, someone who talked big but kept details hidden. By 2004, at just 19, Holmes dropped out of Stanford. Not because she had a breakthrough in the lab, but because she had a breakthrough in storytelling. She realized that in Silicon Valley, a pitch could be more powerful than proof. But to make the pitch work, she needed more than words. She needed an image. So she decided to take on the form of her hero. Holmes studied Steve Jobs like a script. She adopted the black turtlenecks, the intense stare, and even lowered her voice to sound more commanding, a performance designed to make her look like a visionary. And with that performance, she began pitching the con. She told investors she had invented a device, machine so advanced it could run hundreds of diagnostic tests from just one tiny blood sample. No needles, no vials, just a finger prick. She called it revolutionary, life-saving, world-changing, except it didn't exist. But here's the thing, she didn't need proof. She needed belief, and she sold it with secrecy, charisma, and that Steve Jobs cosplay. No data, no working prototype, just ambition wrapped in a black turtleneck. By 2004, she had already pulled in millions. Investors weren't buying science, they were buying her confidence. She wasn't building technology, she was building a con, and the con was working. She wrapped the dream in a shiny new company called Theranos, therapy plus diagnosis minus the actual science. By the mid-2000s, Elizabeth Holmes wasn't just running a startup, she was running a full-blown illusion. Theranos was valued at $9 billion in 2014, and she was suddenly the youngest self-made female billionaire. The media went wild. Forbes put her on their 30 under 30 list. Fortune splashed her across their cover, and every interview painted her as Silicon Valley's golden girl. She strutted around in her black turtleneck, deep voice, and icy stare, selling the dream of saving lives with a single drop of blood. Investors? Hooked. Rupert Murdoch dropped $125 million. The Walton family heirs put in $150 million. Betsy DeVos and her family invested $100 million. Walgreens signed on for nationwide blood testing centers. Politicians praised her as the future of healthcare. She wasn't just a CEO, she was a celebrity. But here's the thing. All that hype was built on smoke. Behind the billion-dollar valuation, the machines didn't work. Behind the magazine covers, the science was broken. And behind the female Steve Jobs headlines, there was just Elizabeth Holmes, cosplaying innovation while conning the world. While the hype machine was blasting her face across Forbes covers, the science crowd was whispering, this doesn't add up. Doctors, lab experts, and even some of her own employees started raising red flags. The secrecy around the labs was suspicious, and the claims sounded more like science fiction than science. But Holmes didn't handle criticism like a normal CEO. She handled it like a dictator in a turtleneck. Doubters got silenced, employees were threatened with lawsuits, and anyone who questioned her was labeled not visionary enough. Journalists who poked around, she sent lawyers after them. Scientists who asked for proof, she brushed them off with that deep voice and a stare that said, "How dare you doubt me?" The irony? The louder the critics got, the more the hype grew. Investors didn't see the warnings, they saw ambition, and Holmes kept selling the dream, even as the cracks in her empire were starting to show. Then came the hammer, the Wall Street Journal. In October 2015, journalist John Kerry dropped an exposé that basically said, "Yo, Theranos is a scam." Regulators piled on. The Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services inspected Theranos labs and found results so inaccurate that they could put patients at risk. Machines weren't working, tests were being secretly run on regular lab equipment, and the revolutionary technology was basically smoke and mirrors. Holmes's response? Denial. She went on TV, gave interviews, and stared down the camera like, "We're changing the world. Don't listen to the haters." She doubled down, even as the evidence stacked up against her. But the investigations kept digging, and every layer they peeled back revealed the same thing. There was no miracle machine, just a billion-dollar con wrapped in a black turtleneck. The hype train finally derailed. Walgreens pulled the plug, investors started running for the exits, and Theranos went from a $9 billion revolution to a billion-dollar punchline. By 2016, regulators had banned Holmes from owning or operating a lab for 2 years. The empire she built on smoke was crumbling fast. Then came 2018. The SEC charged Holmes and her partner, Sunny Balwani, with massive fraud. They were accused of lying to investors, doctors, and patients about technology that never worked. Holmes tried to spin it, claiming she never intended to mislead anyone. But the evidence was brutal. Investors had been lied to, patients had been misled, and billions had evaporated. The con had officially collapsed, and the law was finally catching up. By the time the trial rolled around, the hype was dead, and the turtleneck had turned into a punchline. Holmes walked into court, still trying to play the role. A calm voice, an icy stare, acting as if she were misunderstood rather than exposed. The courtroom wasn't buying the act. In January 2022, the jury found her guilty on 4 counts of fraud and conspiracy. The female Steve Jobs was now the female Bernie Madoff in a turtleneck. Then came November 2022, sentencing day. She was sentenced to 11 years in prison. In May 2023, she finally reported to serve her 11-year sentence. The legend is gone, the empire is dust, and Elizabeth Holmes is no longer Silicon Valley's golden girl. She's inmate number 02879-509 at a federal prison in Texas. The woman who once strutted across magazine covers as a visionary now spends her days in khaki prison uniforms, trading boardrooms for bunk beds. Her company? Dead. Her reputation? Shattered. Her name? Forever stamped as the face of one of the biggest frauds in tech history. She wanted to be remembered as the next Steve Jobs. Instead, she's remembered as the cautionary tale, the billionaire who lied her way to the top only to crash harder than anyone before her.